And we are back in this video with objectives 3, 4, and 5. We're going to start with explaining the issues associated with the scientific method. So first off, what does the scientific method actually look like? Here's what you do. You first ask a question, then you do some background research to see what else has been done on that question. You're going to construct a hypothesis, what you think will happen. Then you're going to test your hypothesis by doing a study. And then you'll analyze your data and draw a conclusion, and then you report your results. Was your hypothesis right or was it wrong? That's the simple in and out of the scientific method. Very easy. Okay, we're going to talk about some issues associated with the scientific method. For example, number one, and we talked a little bit about scrutiny on the last video. Science must be publicly scrutinized. So what does that actually mean? What it means in practice of science is that we do what's called a peer review. And that's where research is submitted to a journal and then it is critiqued by other scientists. So just earlier today, I submitted a journal article to be published in a journal, and they will then send it to 3 other scientists who do the same kind of research. This particular article was about celebrity worship, and they'll send it out to 3 other people who do celebrity worship research, and then they will critique it, and then they'll send it back to me, and I'll have to make changes based on their critiques, and then it will get published after that. Another thing that we do is that we replicate. And so the way that you write a scientific article is that you write it in the way where it can be repeated. You tell exactly what you did so that someone else could do the same thing and repeat it. And so we very frequently repeat studies. So recently I did a replication of a study and submitted that as another article this year. Okay. Another issue associated with the scientific method, number 2 issue, is that the scientific method doesn't really work for every question. Sometimes it's too expensive to do the science on it. Sometimes it's actually unethical to do a scientific study on something. Some questions you can't really address scientifically because they're really about values, and values you really got to kind of decide for yourself. So when you're talking about right and wrong, so for example, the death penalty is unethical. Some people will believe it's ethical and some people will believe it's unethical. That's a values issue. We can't really get to the scientific truth of that. People should read the Bible. Again, sometimes some people believe that you shouldn't, some people believe that you shouldn't, but that's not something that science can address. That's something you've got to decide for yourself. Okay, this is a little exercise you can do if you'd like to pause the video. Objective 4, we're going to distinguish basic and applied scientific research. So there are 2 types of research. There's basic research. In that basic research, we seek to understand the world better. For example, we may look at a brain scan to look at what brain activity looks like in depressed people, which parts of the brain are active, which parts of the brain are not so active. It doesn't really solve a problem. It just helps us to understand the world better. And so that's why we call it basic, right? Applied research is an application of research to a particular existing problem. So this would be something like, does therapy reduce depression? And what kinds of therapy are best for reducing depression? So there you're actually getting at the problem of depression and trying to solve it. So a lot of times, the more that we learn in basic research, that will lead us to applied research. But usually the basic research often comes first because we've got to learn a lot about the topic before we actually apply it. Okay, I'm going to go into a few different kinds of research designs on our last objective here, the basic types of research designs. So we've got 3 basic types of research designs. In the whole of this semester, we will be dealing with these kinds of research designs. So the first one, although it's not labeled with the 1, is descriptive research. Is studying how things typically are. For example, if we went in and looked in the student cafeteria in the CAF, as we call it at Lincoln. We could look at student diet. We could go over to the cafeteria. We could observe what students eat. We could observe what food is taken the most of, what food is consumed most, what are the calorie content and the nutritional content of that food and all of that. What you're basically doing is just describing what students eat. You're not trying to change anything. You're not trying to associate anything. You're just giving a nice description of what students eat. So another thing we can do is try to find the relationships between variables. And so for the second type of design is correlational research. And that's studying the relationship between two things. So for example, does fast food consumption predict illness in students? Are those two variables tied together? What we're going to see in this class is that's great for prediction. If we can see that two things are tied together, then we know if a student eats a lot of fast food, they're going to be more likely to get ill. But that does not mean that you can conclude cause and effect, because even if people who eat a lot of fast food are very likely to get ill, it could be for some other reason, for example, that they don't exercise or something like that. So thirdly, we've got experimental research. And the nice thing about experimental research is we can look at what actually causes what. So with experimental research, we can actually look at whether eating fast food actually causes illness. So you can do this little activity here to see whether the question is a descriptive one, a correlational one, or an experimental one, if you go ahead and pause right now. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video for chapter 2. Have a great day.